Definitely, like the first thing we do is we take them through several tests. So we test where their flexibility and their mobility is, because we found that a lot of people that do really well in parkour can accomplish moves like the carry through very easily and have a certain base level of fitness. So we take them through these tests of mobility and flexibility, and then we train those to get to the level it needs to be.
Yeah, and then we focus on giving them the concepts of what their body needs to do when they're doing parkour, and those are, one big one is just alignment. You have to think about how your joints actually function, and once people have that in their mind that, okay, this joint bends this way, it shouldn't be bending this way, and if I stack my joints, it's a lot stronger than if it's bent. And once you have these certain concepts in your mind, then you can apply it to parkour, because when you're taking, say, like a basic drop and you're doing a basic landing, you need to make sure that your joints are all aligned and that you're collapsing the right way. Otherwise, you're going to have chronic injuries, or you're going to have a massive injury if you're going for a big jump. So you apply these small concepts at first, so you get them in their head, like alignment and things like this, and it makes the whole process a lot easier.
Yeah, that's really cool. That sounds like an interesting approach to it. I like the exercise you're talking about. What'd you call it? The crawl through?
Carry through?
Carry through. Yeah, that seems like a cool. I'm like on the fence about getting down and just seeing if I can do that right now. But I wanted to ask you guys. So it sounds like a lot of what is really involved in parkour is that dynamic flexibility, or the ability to kind of assume positions without having something press into you. Like, so, being able to do like a pike without somebody pushing on your back or hinging forward at the hips, because you need to be able to jump into small positions really fast. Is there any other exercises kind of like the carry through that you guys train for that?
The third world squat, you might be familiar with that.
No.
It's just where you do a squat and you go, they call it the third world squat apparently because over in third world countries they don't have a bunch of chairs and stuff, so they're constantly, when they're resting or anything, they're sitting, let me see if I can get in there, in like this position on the ground. Right. So it's a lot of range of motion.
Yeah, basically their hamstrings are against their calves.
Right.
And so what we have people do is we'll have them start in a standing position with their legs about shoulder width apart, not shoulder width, but a hip width apart, and they go all the way down to as far as they can go. The goal is to get to where you can rest your hamstrings on your calves and have your feet flat on the ground and hold your balance, and then come back up. And we do this repeatedly.
Yeah.
So third world squat, carry throughs,
butt scoots.
Oh, butt scoots is a really good one for the abs. And
basically, it's almost like you're in a V-sit type position, but your butt's sitting on the ground, and you lift your hips up, and then you take small scoots forward by lifting your hips off the ground, placing it back down, and scooting like that.
Yeah. We used to do those in gymnastics. So you're basically just walking around in an L-sit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a great one. Yeah, I've noticed a lot of gymnastics exercises are great for parkour movements, because the movements are so similar, or the flexibility and the strengths you've got to have in both are very similar.
Also, basic balancing. So just balancing on a rail and then hand balancing is a really big one, because a lot of the movements you're going to be inverted or upside down in that kind of motion, and just having that extra awareness and that extra strength helps a lot with a lot of the vaults and movements.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm so glad you guys talk about the balance and coordination components of it. I had a client who just had the worst balance in the world, and she couldn't lift one leg without instantly falling over. And so I ingrained into her that, hey, here's the deal. When you brush your teeth, you have that Sonicare toothbrush that beeps halfway through, right? I said, stand on one leg, and then when it beeps, stand on the other leg. And do that every time you brush your teeth, twice a day, every single day. And strangely enough, in 6 months, her balance was significantly improved. It still obviously needed a lot of work. But it's amazing how, like, some people lose the ability to stand on just one foot. And that's just something that, like, everybody should be practicing every day, is just how to stand and stabilize on one leg. As far as coordination goes, there's not a lot of physical disciplines that focus on developing coordination, right? It's becoming more popular. People are talking about movement stuff, but a lot of the time, people are doing kind of traditional workouts. They're not really working on coordinating their full body. And in my opinion, I think the reason is because you can't easily quantify coordination, right? You can't just be like, okay, your push-up today is better than your push-up yesterday, unless you're a seasoned coach. So how do you guys quantify movement skill in parkour? How do you progress somebody? It's not like sets and reps, obviously. How do you quantify that?
Yeah, basically we have certain benchmarks, and usually we can either do this with moves, so like just their ability to land, like say if we do precision training and just their ability to land on one line to the other repeatedly. So if they can do it 3 times in a row, then that's, you know, a lot better. And usually people can't even do that at first. And so we use it by gauging their movements, and also just by certain balancing things, like a lot of people, when they're doing quadrupedal movement, this is where you have to use reciprocating movement. So you're having to balance on the opposite. So when you move your right hand forward, you're keeping your left leg, you're moving your left leg. So it's the opposites are moving together. And usually people have problems with this at the beginning, so you can really gauge their improvement just by how coordinated they are and how fast they can move in this.
And how fluid they're moving as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, yeah, being very fluid. You can see this pretty big time. Like if someone, when they first get started, they're really blocky, really jerky. It's not. You can tell their joints aren't moving together properly. And once they build the coordination, the moves come a lot smoother. It's a lot faster, and it's a lot more efficient. And so it's a lot harder to gauge, but you can gauge it. If you're a coach like us, you can gauge it just by looking at someone, and also for the person doing it, it just feels different. Once it starts to click and they get better, their eyes light up because you can feel it. It's a feeling that you get. It's more about the feeling that you get when you're training.
Yeah, that's interesting. Everybody knows that feeling when they like hit that in the zone rep or that in the zone movement where they're just like, oh my God, that was it. You know, it seems like it's a good way to gauge it, and especially with something that you can't easily quantify with stuff like that. Yeah. I'm interested in how often you guys train and what maybe the minimum effective dose would be for learning to do parkour, not going crazy and stuff like that, but just learning the basics.
Yeah, currently right now we train about five days a week.
Yeah, usually,
but not that intense. Like when we first started training when we were younger, we were training like 2-a-days, and we were going 2-a-days of like 5 days a week. But now we pretty much go. There's 3 days that we choose, like usually Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or hard days that we do a lot of hard conditioning and training, and then in between this lighter days working more on balance, flow, like fluid movement,
and lighter things.
Yeah.
So yeah, not too much.
No.
As long as you spend like an hour, if someone's just getting into it and they spend an hour 3 days a week and they incorporate this functional fitness and learning some of the basic movements, then that's a good place to start.
Definitely. Yeah, awesome. 3 days a week, focusing an hour, dedicating an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Probably 80% of it going to that functional fitness, and then the 20% going to learning the basic moves and the technique.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And so you guys don't just practice parkour, though. You guys are getting into all the other stuff, too. Do you guys practice the progressive calisthenics and the bar work and so on and so forth?
A little bit, but it's more like we'll watch a video, and then we'll just try to learn how to do it.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah. And sometimes we'll just completely immerse ourselves into another discipline completely. Like a few years ago, we got into breakdancing, where we spent about 6 months like training breakdancing pretty hard. And then recently, we've been doing kung fu and different martial arts, things like that, incorporating some yoga and some tai chi, stuff like that. And usually we'll kind of go into a different movement and explore that for a few months and train that really hard, then kind of add the components that we like with that movement into our own training.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That just sounds like, the workout warrior's journey right there. Just like try something out and take what works and discard what you don't like or don't think works and bring it into your own practice. I think that's such a great way to train, and that's why I'm such a huge fan of cross training, because I feel like there's nothing wrong if you want to go the distance on something, like become the greatest bodybuilder or sprinter or hand balancer, whatever. I think that it's amazing when people do that. But I simply do not have the patience to focus on one thing for 5 or 10 years in a row, to achieve that excellence or mastery. And that's not discrediting that stuff. Like I said, that's amazing. And if anything, I think it's wonderful that people out there are actually doing that stuff. What is your guys' take on cross training? You mentioned trying a bunch of other stuff. Do you think that parkour fits well into people's kind of like cross training regimen?